Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Opera with Fries. I'm one of your co-hosts, Carl Tanner. Our other co-host, Oren Gratis, is on vacation in Vegas, blowing all his little bit of money that he has. And my other co-host is going to introduce himself right now.
Good afternoon. I'm Frank Basile. Thanks, Carl. We have a wonderful guest for you today, a world-class tenor who's been renowned as the great interpreter of Tristan and Isolde with an over 50-year career as one of the world's leading Helden tenors. And I'm really excited about this guest because Carl is the tenor on our podcast. He is the biggest voice to me in the universe. So it's nice to have another big voice that the two of them can share and swap stories. But this gentleman has sung at the Met for many years and did the Ring cycle. I think it was 6 consecutive performances of the entire Ring cycle. Just the marathon of that alone is extraordinary. Sung at every great opera house in the world, from La Scala to the Royal Opera House at Covent Garden. And with no further ado, ladies and gentlemen, we have with us today Jon Fredric West.
Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Carl. Thank you, Frank. It's wonderful to be here, and such an introduction I already feel somewhat humbled by. Or either that, or why did I want to do that much work in my life? I have no idea. You got to be a little pazzo here, to face Wagner and to go through it over and over and over and over again. It does test your mettle.
Yeah. Carl's been telling me lately he's working on his German repertoire these days, so I'm sure you two have probably a lot in common as far as the learning curve goes.
I bet. I started, when I started out of the gate, people were telling me, "Oh, you should sing German," but all they were hiring me to sing was Italian rep. And now, looking at where I'm at in my age, 39, as you said, I'm thinking maybe the German rep is looking a little more appealing, because John, you and I can sit here and either talk about or commiserate what's happened to the opera world. When you were younger, when I was younger, Frank is younger, and our guest, who has not been introduced yet because she's the most famous of all, she's already young, but when we started our careers, we would hear, "Bide your time, put in your dues. You'll have a career in your 50s and 60s and 70s." Well, now looking at what's happened in opera, if you're lucky enough to have a career, you'll have a career in your 20s and 30s, because by the time you're in your 40s, you're a veteran, you're an ancient, because of the climate in this business. And it's unfortunate. I bring it up in a lot of podcasts that we do. And when I'm a guest on a show, I talk about it because I think it's a sacrilege to the art form. But you tell us, you were lucky enough to have one of those incredibly incredible durations, careers. And tell us about it. I mean, really, I grew up watching you. Not that you're much older than me, but remember, I started late.
Right.
So I grew up watching you, seeing you, and thinking, "Holy crap, I don't know if I'll ever sing Wagner." So tell us.
Well, I would like to address that first point that you made, but I won't address it at this moment. I'll tell you first, I was very, very lucky that I'm Irish in background. I'm a Cassidy from County Meath. And so I was singing from the very beginning. My mother told me when I was 3 years old that I was singing as I was doing chores and so on and so forth.
Is this in Ohio, John?
I'm from Dayton, Ohio, yes.
Yeah, Irish
my
from
wife
Ohio.
And I both.
Never heard of it.
Never.
Well, sometimes I wish I hadn't either. Anyway, so I was actively in music. I started drums, I started piano, I started a little bit of violin from my mother, who played, when I was around 6 and 7 years of age. And at that point, I decided I wanted to be a conductor. And funny, now today, when I think about what the abysmal conducting that's going on in the opera world, and the making up of theorems and thoughts about how to handle the voice that is coming from even the highest sectors, as if we don't have YouTube to prove how wrong they all are. I wish I had become a conductor, but be that as it may, I was singing throughout all of this time, and then I had the great fortune and luck to join the Dayton Rotary Boys Choir. And that was with Mr. James Wilson conducting, who had studied with Shaw and had been involved in Shaw's chorales, both in New York and Cleveland, and with going to Casals Festival when Pablo conducted the El Pesebre. And Jim was a marvelous lyric, full voice, rounded lyric tenor. And after work, first of all, he said, "Son, you're no baritone. If you enter this choir, you're going to be moved up to tenor."
That
I
sounds
said,
like
"Okay."
Carl.
Right. Okay, Mr. Wilson, you're the boss. So I did. And then I started studying with Jim. And by the time I was 15, he gave me the awful news that I was going to be a Helden tenor. And oh my God, that caused so much Sturm und Drang in my soul. I mean, I grew up reading, about Caruso and about McCormick and about Gigli and Pinza, and I wanted to be the all-purpose Italian tenor like Tucker. And so it came as a dreadful bad news to me that I had to do something that I didn't even like. I mean, what's a kid from Dayton, Ohio know about German repertoire? Very little. And so I just said, well, I can't do that now. And he said, of course not. He said, so you have two choices. You either come back to me in your early 20s when your voice is mature, or if you want to continue to sing, you can do so, but we're going to retrain you to the lightest possible sound you can make every day, and I still do in some form or other. And so I said, well, then let's do that. So he retrained me to a very light sound, possibly, maybe we can say too light, but it was light enough that I sang the first act of Barbiere. I sang my first La Boheme when I was 17 years old. I did 18 full recitals of all the major song cycles, including the Magalone Lieder, with spoken paragraphs before in college. And I came to New York with Maestro Schick, who said, well, son, you're a spinto tenor. I sang the improviso from Chenier for him. And he said, we only do Mozart here. You wouldn't be happy doing Mozart. And I said, are you kidding, Maestro? I'll be happy doing anything with you in New York. So, I wasn't that far away. So I was hired for Belmonte and in the Abduction and Così. And at the same time, I had another Bohème, another Faust, and another Rigoletto that I did my first year in New York at 22. So all the time, though, people kept saying, yes, son, but you're a German voice, you're a German, blah, 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 blah. and I just would lay over my mother's bed when I'd go home to Dayton. I'd say, me too little, I can't do this, me too little, I can't do it. Finally, it came down to I started doing Fidelio when I was 28, and I did my first Pagliacci when I was 24. And that led to Zubin wanting to hear me for the Gurlieder and Das Lied von der Erde.
Would that be Zubin Mehta?
Yes, Zubin Mehta in the New York Philharmonic when I was 32.
Never heard of him.
And he said to me, well, son, I'm never going to hire you for Italian. Maybe an Otello if you get famous enough or something like that, but never am I going to hire you for Italian. And inevitably, that's what happened all around the world. All the conductors said German only, except, might be interesting to note, Henry Holt, who used to be at Seattle conducting, and he was just the opposite. He said, I'm only going to hire you for dramatic Italian repertoire. And I remember saying to Henry, well, Henry, you realize you're the odd man out because nobody else is going to do that. And he said, I don't care. That's what I hear you, and that's the way it's going to be. So interestingly, that it was just a deck of cards that said I was a German tenor. And sure enough, as soon as I could accept that in my heart of hearts and learn the technique and learn the music and, more importantly, develop a love for it, which now I can't believe my attitude was such. But and a little ashamed of it in a way. But the point is that I did it, and with everything that I did, it was clear to me. And through the 80s, I did Daphne, I did Bacchus a lot, Fidelio, the Gurlieder. And my first Wagner was 1988 when I did Walküre in Bologna. And that's the famous quote, because I was the second cast. I had 4 performances. That's when they did, 12 performances in a row. And Siegfried Jerusalem was the first cast. And he would sit down in the cantina and he would smoke till he walked on stage. And he would say to me, I would walk in and he'd say, well, you've heard of vocalizing. Well, I'm schmokelizing.
Schmokelizing.
So, all right. So that was my introduction to staged Wagner, and it was a Pieralli production, which meant he didn't have any idea how to block, and we were kind of moving in slow motion. But then Siegfried, thank God, took it over and said, "No more. We've been enough. I'm going to block this sucker and get it out there," and we did. And meanwhile, Pieralli had made a film. So during the interludes, there was actually this film that would come on, and it was actually very beautiful. It was very, very beautiful. And that was my introduction, an introduction by fire, to be sure. It was Chailly conducting, and Chailly handpicked me because he also had picked me for many roles in that time period and concerts. And so it went from there. I accepted my fate. I did my first Tannhäuser when I was 1994, and first Tristan in 1996, and then my first Siegfried, which again I had to be talked into. I was sure I could never do that, but so 4 lunches later, I finally acquiesced to it, and I did my first Siegfried in 1999.
Wow, John, I got to tell you something. I'm very impressed that Madoff said that I'd never hire you for Italian rep, because usually they just tell me they'll just never hire me, and they'll stop there.
Yeah.
So,
Now, Frank.
Hey, listen, I don't want to be rude to our other guest. John, would you introduce our other guest, please?
Well, I would be honored to do so. So I would like to introduce Selene Levan from the very, very artistic and musical and great family of musicians, the Levan family, whose her father, Eric Levan, is the recognized Scriabin interpreter of the world today. And if you ever heard him play Sonata No. 5, you'd understand why. It is the only man that has ever brought me to tears within the first 2 pages of playing a piano piece, and brought me to absolute tears. Well, Solène grew up in France till she was 5, and with her sister, she started doing concerts, both vocal and violin. So she's a world-class violinist as well. And she has done over 700 concerts alone, while after they moved to California again when she was 5. And they have been doing the Levan family concerts ever since. Magnificent, played in the Asia, played in Sweden, played in Europe to great acclaim. But all the while along, she wanted to sing, and she did sing all different styles, mind you, jazz and pop. But it came to the point that she was so well versed. She speaks 3 languages. She's incredibly erudite. I mean, makes me feel that I'm a little on the stupid side when we talk. And
well, most tenors are. So go on.
And most women do that to me, John.
The only thing we can do correctly is count money. Count money.
There you go. That and food.
Because we definitely can't count on stage. But go ahead.
Anyway, she was, for instance, she has already, with soon to be released recording of songs of Paladí and Anne that have never been recorded before, have never been on label. And she was doing that when she was 16. Proof is on YouTube if you want to hear it.
Yeah, I saw the video. It's very nice.
Thank you. And that, then she went Queen of the Night and other things at Princeton, where she graduated summa cum laude at 20 years of age.
Yeah, and that was an academic scholarship, wasn't it?
Yes.
Which is
almost. I studied French and Italian literature, but also musical performance.
Yes.
I'm sorry. I can hear my brain cells and my IQ dropping.
Yeah,
when I
mine
speak
too.
with you.
Not like that.
Mine too. Whoop.
This is the future of opera here. I guess.
All right, before you go completely, let me finish the introduction. So we met each other because she already knew of my Wagner, and I heard her on YouTube singing the Queen of the Night aria, and we were both incredibly drawn to each other, knowing that we would have help for each other, and that's what we did. We got in contact 3 years ago, and she was finishing her last year at Princeton, so I wasn't able to actively help every week or anything like that, but I did coach her on the Knoxville summer of 1915, for which she won the Ernest Bacon Award as the best collegiate performance of that year. And then we started working together, and the rest is history. So you can see her most recent videos on YouTube. We just put 5 wonderful videos up, and that is this wonderful young soprano, academician, violinist, you name it, Selene Levan.
Hello, Selene.
Please welcome. Thank you.
Yes. Now, how are you two of you working together now? That I think you put together a studio for training, correct?
Yes, and first of all, I want to thank you all for having me on the show. I feel very honored, of course, because not only am I think, Jon's greatest fan, and totally supportive of everything that he's done in his career and everything that he continues to do today as a pedagogue, but I'm also aware of both of your lives and careers, so I just want to say thank you for that. I suppose that I'm here today to share my experience, not only working with him and being his mentee, so to speak, but also based on our work together, the idea that we started forming about 2 years ago to make a vocal academy, which was recently held online. We had to transition completely to an online platform during the COVID epidemic, and it was remarkably successful. But as Jon mentioned, I've been performing from a very early age, but I've always been devoted in my heart of hearts to operatic study and training. So I felt that I needed very early on, from the age of 14 or 15, some solid foundational technical training. And I sought it in many different places, at the University of Southern California, at Princeton, as I mentioned, but also the Royal College of Music. And I was confounded, I think, as many young singers are today, by the fact that we've lost, perhaps, our conception of the ideal vocal sound and what an optimally beautiful tone is, first of all. And along with it, an entire aesthetic. Crutchfield likes to discuss, Will Crutchfield, why this might be according to historical trends and the rise of media and so forth. But I won't make my own theories here. All I know is that from personal experience, I was told many contradictory and confusing bits of information that not only did not coalesce into something that I felt I could found a technique on, an aesthetic upon, but also sometimes did not match what made me fall in love with opera in the first place. The performances of, Corelli and Freni, and then dating all the way back to the earliest historical recordings that we have. So I found Jon when I was 19, and we began working together. And it was an epiphanic experience for me, because he has the ability to synthesize his vast 50 years of experience in a way that is coherent, in a way that builds on historical precedent, does not throw it away, because unfortunately I did experience a tendency in some institutions, not everyone. I had some wonderful teachers before too, but sometimes students are even discouraged from listening to recordings and trying to see what can be learned from it, both positively and negatively. And Jon didn't do that. He had a very clear method. We formed a total Einheit in that regard. And my immediate thought was, why don't more conservatory students have access to this type of training, and young artists for that matter? So we decided to form the academy. The first year was held in Anaheim, California. We hosted young artists from around the country and gave a masterclass performance in public that was appreciated by all. And then we were faced with the difficulty of canceling or moving forward during the COVID epidemic. And I'm quite proud to say that we managed to transition entirely online, as I mentioned before. We had students internationally, as a matter of fact. They were able to be accommodated, actually even more, through the application process and the coaching and teaching sessions that we created. And we also made a platform of 14 interactive events online, including lectures, and each covering a different topic, ranging from looks on different styles of performance, like Verismo versus bel canto, foundational technique, covering the Melocchi methods, and Tombo Monaco, because we had as special guests the wonderful Linda Rourke Strummer and her husband Peter Strummer, who served on the vocal faculty and who also gave lectures. We covered dramatic interpretation, the art of practicing, which I think is something that's not maybe discussed enough, and yet is the foundation of everything that an artist can accomplish. And also something that I felt was very much lacking in my education for a long time, that I had to supplement on my own, and also, which was fortunately reinforced when I met Jon, but a historical look at all the important singers of the past before the recorded age, and especially in the recorded age, what their accomplishments were, how they changed the course of vocal technique, subjects of that nature. We had a lot of auditors who joined us, and it was a very positive experience overall. So our mission going forward is to continue this type of crucial training together, and I'm very appreciative to be a part, and perhaps to bring some perspective as a researcher, because I did conduct research on historical performance, especially on the French opera comique style, but also as a young person who feels very keenly the need for it.
And I'd also like to add to that if anyone ever wants to see our lectures, they are still available online, all 14 of them, for a very reasonable and nominal sum. And I would recommend them to any of us, and particularly to young professionals.
Yes.
Yeah, Jon, I'd imagine in today's age with technology, Selene has been very helpful at shaping and putting, like, on the internet, your wealth of knowledge.
We were talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
You bet. She has been absolutely spectacular. She and her sister Sarah also helps to put all this together. And Selene is directly and the only one responsible for my archives. And all the archives will be handled by her, even when I'm not here. If she wants to continue to do it, which she says she does, bless her for that. Then eventually, someday, it'll all be up there. Because
Jon,
unfortunately, much of my work was during the tape era, when the
Sure.
cassette tapes.
Yes.
Yeah.
And
Now, I have a question. Go ahead,
Carl.
Frank. I'm
No,
sorry.
buddy, you go ahead.
No, I was just going to take it in a little different direction. Selene, let me ask you a question.
Yes,
So you're in California?
that's right.
Okay. Now, outside of music, how do you let your hair down?
That's
How
a
do
lot.
you relax? So what is your guilty pleasure?
Yes.
And on this show, you may be as graphic as you like.
Oh,
That's right.
well,
I'm all about, I tell young students or young singers or young artists and musicians, I make my son, when he's reading, I make him do it for short spurts at a time, because one, you memorize quicker, you remember and you recall and you memorize much quicker by doing it in short spurts. I learned this technique a long time ago when I sit down and learn music. I learn it for 10, 15 minutes at a time, and I get up, I go have a coffee, I look out the window, I go back to it, and guess what? It works for me. Then I found it worked for most people that tried this. So when I take those little breaks, I go out and I go sit in my jewelry desk, or I go sit in whatever, and I just got to get out and do something fun and get away from music, which is my passion. But I got to get away from it often to be able to absorb it better and quicker. So aside from music, aside from violin,
And
said
all-
violin.
And research.
Right.
Is my
So tell me what you do besides any of that, all that.
That's a great question. But first of all, I want to express my admiration that you're transmitting your music making to your son. I think that's wonderful. My father did the same for all three of us children, and I will never forget that, truly. So.
Well, my son he plays trumpet. So I tell him, look, work on it for 5-10 minutes at a time. 'Cause later on, you'll feel pressure to work on it for hours at a time. But now, in the crucial learning period, and we're always learning, just do it for a little bit at a time. Because if you get to a point where it's stressful, that's when the mind starts shutting down the ability to learn. It starts putting stress on it. And this music should not be stressful unless it's a stressful scene on stage that you're watching that the artists are conveying to you. But when you're learning it, it shouldn't be stressful.
That's
It's going to be challenging enough. So what do you do? Do you go out and drive your car at 100 miles an hour? Do you go to Starbucks and order a really strong latte? What do you do?
Well, I'm a bit of an oddball, I'm afraid, because the kinds of things I like to do in my spare time are, for example, I'm a very great film movie buff, and especially of old Hollywood musicals. And so recently, my guilty pleasure has been in the evening when I finished all of my activities and I get away from it all. I'll take a tape. Recently, it was Judy Garland, Gene Kelly, and Balling the Jack, and I'll try to learn the dance. So
See, now we're back to the arts.
And
I was hoping you were say you're an obsessive gambler or something.
Yeah.
Gambler, yes.
Or women's roller derby or something, you know.
No, I'm a little bit a nut about Hollywood musicals, and I love also poetry. I love writing poetry and reading. Reading is I think my ultimate favorite activity. If I could have another calling in life, it would have been a writer, and yet that's as Charles Dickens said, that's the least respectable profession. So
Wow. Well, I want to ask you then, Selene, an honest question here. It needs your complete honesty, because I mean, I know you probably did your research before you got involved in our podcast. But with all your experience in watching classic movies, did you know who my wife was before you researched this podcast?
Yes, I did. And you know why?
No,
Because
why?
I grew up and absolutely adored high society. Of course, the second half of the movie I completely went over my head as a child, but I absolutely adored your wife on that, and thought she was a firecracker in every respect.
Firecracker's a good word for her.
So
Absolutely.
No, absolutely. I'm actually a little bit in awe of that whole tradition of entertainment, although that word doesn't correctly describe the art of it.
Yeah, well, kudos to you for knowing at your age, because so many don't, follow and learn the history of their craft.
Oh, I
So
know.
that's
Jon, Selene, what's the name of your program that you have?
The Jon Fredric West Vocal Academy. And we're going to continue to run it, and we're trying to begin to make decisions even to this summer, which of course, again, we're going to have to go with what COVID demands, but we're talking about both combining with Linda Rourke Strummer and Peter Strummer for a 2-week or 3-week session with our two institutes combined. That could really, even if we have to do it online again, Peter is so well versed in the acting and the structure, and of course Linda was a magnificent dramatic coloratura, and so she has a lot to say on that side of things. So we're in the process of deciding basically in the next couple months what we have to do and how we're going to set it up. But I think we have decided we definitely want to go for it every summer. That's not only do I want Selene to inherit that, I want her, when I kick the bucket or get close, I want her to be able to take it over and say that that's, her business venture. And so we're going to continue to do that as long as we can, for sure.
You got to stop liking, I'm sorry, you have to stop calling yourself old. If I'm 39,
That's
you're only 4 years older than me.
You look great, Jon, by the way. I mean,
43.
you're full head.
Well, thank you.
Frank, we can honestly say that Frank is the oldest here. So let's move on.
Okay.
Hey,
All
John,
right.
John, you're married. I understand you're happily married, been with your wife for what, 35, 40, 30?
1968.
Wow. Now, how did you manage a successful marriage in a career that takes you on the road? Did she and you travel a lot together, and might limit your stories from the road?
Yeah, you have to save that for a little bit later on.
That's
We have
right.
a segment
Yeah.
called Stories from the
Actually,
Road.
I don't have that many stories from the road to tell you the
Oh,
truth.
yes, you do.
No, I was 16 years of age, and Sharon was 20, going on 21.
Wow.
And you see, I had this tremendous, when you talked about what Selene likes to do for fun, I'm the same way. I didn't like to do anything but music and art for fun. That was not only my work, but it was also my fun.
So
And
not a
so-
TV show, or not like a crazy movie or a TV show, really?
Oh, I loved all the movies and everything like that, but it was funneled through my brain as, look how Ronald Coleman acts. Look how Greer Garson is such a star.
I'm
And
getting
my-
embarrassed. John, listen, Carl and I watch movies and pass the potato chips late at night.
Well,
Check it out.
I passed the potato chips or whatever, but it was a passion and fun. And so basically I had decided that I was going excuse me for this terrible thing that I used to think about myself, but I was determined that I was going to be the world's next greatest tenor. And therefore I had to set up a life.
Uh-oh.
And that meant a wife now, because when I was world famous, I wouldn't have the time to find a relationship. So I went about to find a relationship before that happened, which I was assured that it was, in my mind, assured that it was going to happen. So I found Sharon. I was the tech director at the Dayton Theater Guild, and she was the ingenue in All Wilderness, which I still remember. That'll be wonderful, won't it, Dick?
Well, listen, you envisioning.
I think that's wonderful, buddy. I think
you
that's
envisioning
wonderful.
being one of the next world's greatest tenor.
You and Carl have that
Was
in common.
one of the foundations that made you a great tenor.
Absolutely.
Really.
I
mean,
guess.
if you see it, I believe, forecasting your future, being in control of it. It's not something I believe. It's something I know.
Absolutely.
I
You
know
gotta see
that
it.
Honestly,
if you wake up in the morning and say, "Oh, it's going to be a shit-filled day," guess what it's going to be?
That's right.
If you wake up in the morning and go, "You know what? I don't know for a fact it's going to be a great day, but I have a feeling it's going to be a great day."
Yeah, amen.
And you have a better chance than not of it being a great day.
And Carl, that's true for anything in business. If you're going to start a business, if you got to write a book, you've got to see the end when you start and see it.
It's more than just being positive or having a positive feeling. It's being consistently forward thinking and not
that success.
Look, we have all negative crap around us all the time. It's channeling all that, pushing it back, and channeling any positiveness we have to the front of us. And following that. I mean, I used to see myself as being the world's greatest tenor. Not world's greatest tenor. I wanted to be rich and famous. That's what I told my parents. I was born in a poor household. We had 2 rooms in the house. That was it. And 4 boys in one room, my mom and dad in the other. And that part of their room was a kitchen and a bathroom. It was really, and so, and watching my parents struggle made me want to be,
of course,
rich.
Of course.
And then when I learned I learned that I had a talent, a God-given talent, I thought, okay, I'll turn this into fame because that's how I get money. Sure. So I knew all along that I was going to do what I was set here to do. Mm-hmm. I didn't know I'd be rich. I didn't know I'd be famous, any of that, but that's what I wanted. And look, we've all here attained some level of fame. And in my height of my career, I was making huge money, and it lasted for a while, and we never, and the problem is we never thought it would. Well, we never
you
thought
don't
it
see
would
the end of that.
But all good things come to an end. Now, it hasn't ended. We're all in this business, still in this business.
Changes,
but I'll get off my soapbox about forward thinking. The way you thought when you started out is what carried you through an amazing career.
Well, that is absolutely correct. And although Sharon and I both got full scholarships to the opera theater program for our master's work at Manhattan, and we were the first two students in 11 years to receive that, Sharon, at some point, and she was a beautiful Pucciniana soprano, but at some point she just decided that it wasn't pleasant for her. She didn't want to be away, and so she voluntarily, I never asked, I never demanded, I would have only supported her in what she wanted to do. But she said, I want to quit. I want to go with you. I want to do the things to help you out. She became everything in that sense, including my hatchet lady. So, any
We need that.
costumer, yeah, we need that. And so that's how it worked. And it has worked that way ever since.
How
And
many
so-
years have you been married?
Well, it depends on how you define marriage.
Well, together. Let's
You
just say
met
together.
when you were 16.
That's correct. And we took
And
our
you're
vows
44.
to each other on Christmas Eve of 1968.
Beautiful.
So that is how long we feel we have been married. Legally, it came a little later, but our marriage, our faithfulness to each other was started in 1968.
Yeah, that's wonderful, John. That's wonderful. I had that same experience with my wife. It was before we took the vows before a magistrate that I sat in the hospital with her, and the doctors just told me that life was going to change between my wife and my partner at the time and I, because her
Was
health
she
was going to
pregnant?
change. No, but she
Oh.
had congestive heart failure.
Oh.
And I sat in that room at 2:30 a.m. in the morning with her lying there and looking at her so peacefully. And I just said, for better, for worse,
That's right.
and that's
That's
the
what
way
it
it has
is.
to be, you know.
You bet.
And she woke up, and we continued to go forward together for another, 12 years after that. And but it's a wonderful thing when you know you're with the right one,
That's
and it
right.
helps.
John, I have a
helps.
question
And
for you.
speaking of Carl, that one thing you said about seeing forward, that's one thing that Callas always said, that a good voice teacher deals with what they have, and a great voice teacher sees the end of what's going to be.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
I have always subscribed to that idea that you cannot teach mediocrity by just saying, well, this is the way we're going to do it today. You have to say, this is the way it was done. The wheel has already been invented. Get on the wheel and ride it and learn to do it right. And there's Caruso, there's Martinelli,
Yes.
there's Tucker, there's Corelli, you name it, and they did it before you. I'd like to hear you do it even close to that well.
Right. Now, I have a question. Are
Sure.
you still in Dayton?
Oh, no. We moved for the graduate work in 1974 to New York, and we lived there for almost 15 years. And then we moved out to Yonkers, very close to Bronxville, where Sarah Lawrence College is. And we lived there until we decided, well, the career's coming to an end. Why don't we pick up some family time? And we decided, because the family that was extant lived here in Utica, New York. And so we decided to move up here. And so we did in 2005. And that's where I reside at present, in Utica, New York.
So Utica. Now, I putting things together, looking forward, COVID comes to a crashing end. We get rid of this shit, excuse me. Where will you hold your program?
Well, we don't know. We oftentimes we're thinking of Anaheim. We're thinking of here. Maybe if Linda and Peter and Selene and I get along well together, we might do it where they are in Oklahoma. So I have, that's yet to be decided on a permanent basis. We have to see what college institutions may be interested in joining forces with us. We had some offers from Diana Farrell when we did it in Anaheim. And so, although that it's too new to actually have a absolute in stone kind of thing. So we're going to go forward and investigate, Selene and I, and go forward and find out where the best place is to have it more times than not.
Hey, John, excuse me, Selene. John, this transition, though, you at a young age knew what you wanted, you saw a vision for your future, and now you're academia, and mentoring. But how was that transition from actually having a full-time international career to how does that a person kind of manage the emotional change, the psychological, the financial, into when it's time to say it's time for the next part of the journey as opposed to full-time singing? When does that happen? How did it happen for you?
One day I was busy with contracts, and in 2012, all of a sudden there weren't any more contracts. And so one day I was busy and one day I wasn't. And as often happens to many of us, I had to adjust to that, realizing that, yeah, I could have pushed it a little bit more, but honest to God, I didn't want to. There's only so many Tristans you have in your heart. And frankly, the better you do Tristan, which the third act is so depressive, the more it gets into your heart and soul. And I didn't want it anymore, to be honest with you. I had learned to do it very, very well. And the audience loved to hate me for making them so depressed. and so I thought to myself, enough is enough. And I was looking forward to this. Now, combine that with the fact that my family were all teachers. My mother was a third grade teacher for 45 years. My father, although his job was as international salt salesman, and before that A&P managed A&P stores, he was a Toastmaster and a leading teacher in our church, which was the Disciples of Christ, where he had a waiting list of 2 years for people to sit and take his classes. My brother was a professor in college. So I grew up, as I've often said, I had third graders around me when I was in first grade. I had third graders around me in third grade, eighth grade, 20 and 33 before. So I grew up with children, and I grew up watching a master teacher. My mother was just simply amazing how she could control her class and her material and do it with love and care. And so I grew up knowing how to teach. In fact, that was more natural to me than learning how to act in drama, which was a major problem because I was always a little dyslexic. And when the director said, go right, I went left and everybody laughed. So I became a comedian first. and so then it was a natural, and I had been teaching all through my career when I had the time to do so. And then I said, well, now's my challenge to really understand what I want and how to work it out and so on and so forth. So I got luckily, I built my private studio. Also, I work at Hamilton College, which is one of the few liberal arts colleges left that is on a rank of 500. They're number 32. And so there's not a lot of great singers, but there's very intelligent kids. This is like a $65,000, $70,000 a year place. And they're very intelligent. They're very well behaved and smart, and they want to learn, even though it's a hobby. And so that combined with my professional, right now I've got 6 Helden tenors. I mean, if all of them have success, I'm going to be able to just put everyone in every major opera house, and there it is. We got the whole heavy repertoire covered. Anyway,
and then you could retire to Aruba
and be an agent.
Exactly. And that's where we'll hold the academy.
That's
But that's like working in Hawaii. Nothing gets done. We're all on the beach. So,
you live with that.
You can get a piano. You can get a piano on the beach.
That's right.
So I have to say, though, taking it seriously, of course, watching your body go downhill, and I think it's not the voice that leaves. My voice is as strong as it ever was, but it is my body, particularly my lungs, which were never great because I had 2 years of bronchitis in 1977. And so, as I quote the Scottish, my lungs are like a kist full of whistles. So they won't hold the pressure anymore. I get on a note and it's a great note, and then all of a sudden I hear it later and it's sunk a quarter of a tone and I didn't even hear it. And it's because my lungs will not hold the pressure. So that is more difficult to accept, that your body is aging, and everybody's body ages at a different rate. and it's not your voice, it's your body. And I think that has, well, I've to be frank, I've had some depression over it. I've had a realization, but now in the last couple of years, I am through that. I am happy doing, when I have people like Selene, when I have people like Clay Hilly, uh, 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 Jennifer Giudice, a beautiful Tabaldi-like lyric soprano. When I have great singers that I'm really helping, great artists, young potential, and ones who already have a career, it is so fulfilling. And frankly, I'm working harder now than I ever worked in my career in many ways, because it's every day. It's not just, a 2-month segment and then I come home for 2 or 3 weeks and all I have to do is worry about myself and get things changed over and go again. This is every day, and I have to be prepared every day to help Selene get the next problem or the next what more can we emphasize to make you special. And that takes preparation and work and thought and rest. And so I'm finding a more disciplined life, and also Selene helps me, remind me to be disciplined, as does my wife Sharon. I find that is more fulfilling in some ways than doing a Tristan, where I go home terribly depressed from. The better I do it.
Yeah.
Well, so you go home terribly depressed with a big paycheck. Let's be honest.
Yes, but now Carl, Germany takes 38 to 41%. The agent takes 10 or 15%. The living expenses. So you're very lucky if you bring home 32 to 28% of your income.
No, I know.
So
that.
$500,000 or 800,000 or $1 million, when you whittle it down to 28%, it's good. It's better than others. Yes, right. And I'm grateful for it, but it's not what it looks like on paper.
I understand. Yeah, we talked about this on a podcast one time.
Yeah,
about how when you tell people you're when you tell people you're an actor, and they go, "Oh, what restaurant do you work in?" And they tell you tell people, "Oh, I'm a rock singer." They go, "Oh, what bar are you performing in?" You tell people you're an opera singer, they don't know what the hell to ask you. And when they figure it out, they go, "Oh, so
what do you do for a living?"
Yeah, so you're a singing waiter. But the people that do make it, your career, my career, Frank's career, and this young lady is sure to have a major career. We have to stock the money away when we make it. And I wish somebody would have told me that when I was 30.
Me too. Yeah. I'm going to say I lived high on dog. I had the best hotels and the best wines and the best 5-star love, the vivre restaurants and so on and so forth. And yes, I should have been much more careful than I was. On the other hand, I cannot honestly say I am disappointed that I was able to try a single still Armagnac from pre-World War I. I don't care how expensive it was.
Yeah, there are moments
that was like, whoa, baby. I mean,
perfect.
It was Absolutely. So wonderful.
Now
that it's like a toss-up. These are some of the best things that the earth and we have made. And if I didn't try it, okay, I'd be a little bit more comfortable now. Yes, for sure. But on the other hand, I look back on that and I think with joy that I got a chance to sample those things.
Well, everything in moderation, Jon.
Now, I know Frank wants to ask you another question, but I want to ask you my last question. We have a segment called Stories from the Road, as you've probably heard. And it's where I like to ask our guests to just tell us a funny little anecdote or something that maybe happened to you on the road. We've had movie stars, we've had TV stars, we've had radio stars, rock singers, everybody, and they've all told a little something funny that happened to them. And so we would love to have you and even Selene, if she has something maybe while in school or something that you want to tell.
Selene, I've got to think, because of course, but for some reason I'm drawing a blank right now. So why don't you go ahead if you've got a funny story while I think about mine, okay?
Just something quick and funny that might have happened to you.
Yes.
Yes. No, I have many funny stories. I mean, starting from my very first ones I gave when I was 4, where I was unfortunately off the stage, and in consternation, the audience gasped, and I clambered on. I was told.
Selene, you're disappearing
Yeah,
on
we
us.
Your
can't
mic
hear
went
you,
out, so then
Selene.
Yeah,
We can't hear you.
Oh, well, I'm sorry about that.
and you're very light. You're very faint.
Yeah.
what happened?
I don't,
You,
I don't.
Are you there?
Yes, hear me now?
Oh, no, you're popping in and out. Well, listen.
Well, I'll go
take
ahead
your
then.
time.
I'll go ahead. Oh, gosh. So it was at City Opera with Turandot and Linda Kelm, a humongous voice. And I love singing with her because my voice and her voice matched. But it was a Ming Cho Lee set. And so there were a lot of steps. And those steps were narrow. And here, although I wasn't as big then as I am now, still I was, about 200-pound guy. And of course, she was a big lady. And they wanted us to come down those steps one at a time as we're singing the final love duet, which was the Alfano. And again, thanks to Selene, my original Alfano ending from City Opera is on YouTube. And I would suggest that everybody listen to it just to hear how really exciting the Alfano ending was.
Principessa, Principe. It's really strange.
Exactly. And so one day we kind of had to move our feet instead of this way, the normal way, we had to move them that way, or this way, or this way, or this way. Well, one day, both of us got hopelessly caught up in her costume.
Oh my
And
goodness.
we started rocking, trying to hold on to each other like crazy. And it was kind of funny because we kind of slid down the steps as we lost our balance a little by little, and we just slithered down like a slinky. We didn't lose our balance, and neither of us fell, but we came really perilously close. And that combined with another story in Carmen in Detroit, where I was to tie her hands, of course, in the first act, and somehow the rope slipped off of her hands and slithered, because it was a rake stage, and slithered into the orchestra pit. Okay, little titters of laughter, but we played it through and didn't let anybody go on. And then this very zealous chorister, about 5 minutes after that had passed, brought on the rope and said, "Here, Corporal, here's the rope." And of course, that stopped everything. Everybody started laughing, and we just had to wait until we'd lived through that. So little things like that all the way through your career.
Well, John, I did my very first Turandot of 240 some Turandots. I did my very first at City Opera, and I was in much better shape than I was then that I am now. And they put me in these black tights, which you can see. Somebody put it on Facebook, and opening night, I'm in this beautiful sequin like smoking jacket and these black tights, and I'm singing Nessun Dorma, and I go to sit on the steps to put my arms back and listen to the little chorus, da, dee, 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 dee. And I'm laying back relaxed, and I realized I've split my my black pants from the front all the way to the back. Now I was smart. I had worn black underwear.
Thank God.
But I felt this air conditioning, and it was amazing. And then I got up and I kind of like turned kind of upstairs. I knew that if I stood, this jacket would cover my crotch. So I stood and I kind of reached down in front, and I realized I didn't split them. They were in two pieces.
Oh my goodness.
And there was a tiny little thread holding on to the front of them. And I was soon just going to have leggings. If I didn't get off the stage.
Right. But that thread was big enough to cover everything, Carl, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
Now, Frank.
Yes, it was, Frank. Yes, it was. So yeah, it's a little crazy thing. It seems to happen during Turandot.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, there's stuff like that all through. So,
You
so
know,
I,
I've
Yeah.
I've had situations where I've shown up on stage in the dream where you feel that you're asked to play a piece you don't know is filled. And that I think
Yes.
is probably the
it's a
worst.
nightmare.
Yes.
That's actually been in reality for my
That's
whole career.
mine too.
Yeah. It's I remember I was playing in the International Jazz Festival in Munster, France, and it's headed by a lovely man who's in his 80s now named Michel Hauser. And he really encapsulates the older style of French Parisian gentleman. He was a collaborator very close with Django Reinhardt, if anyone knows of the French gypsy jazz that I absolutely adore, and Stéphane Grappelli. He told us fabulous stories about them. But he was in his 80s, and so we made a very careful program. And on the day of the concert, the orders were switched, and there were some pieces that I had never heard of that I was supposed to improvise to as a violinist and a singer. And I did it because it's jazz and you move on. But
Sure.
it was an interesting phenomenon. I will say, made it more spontaneous though.
That's
And
beautiful.
I've had wardrobe.
And you pulled it off.
Too. Yes, fortunately, but the audience was so lovely that I think they may have figured out what was going on, and they were very forgiving.
Supportive. Yeah.
Grateful. They found it part of the experience. So
They were just glad not to be up there having to do it.
Yeah.
I mean, I enjoyed it. It was we went with it. We rolled with it.
Beautiful. Well, Frank, do you want to ask another question? We have to wrap up soon here.
Listen, I've just had a phenomenal time getting to know both of you, and I think you were just tremendous guests. And I hope, John, that we get a chance to have that single malt again sometime, maybe off camera here, and you could tell even more stories that led you in your career. If you got to, I don't want you to compromise, your faith, but we're all human. And I guess, being from a strict Christian family, that may have played a role in your career. But, I know in this business, we sometimes end up letting our hair down at times.
Well,
he almost died on stage. John didn't even mention that part, but he had multiple very dangerous falls on his leg, and a situation where his leg was caught in the machine, and he had to keep on singing valiantly. So that's
were they caused by sopranos?
No, they were caused by David Alden. Doing one of those kitchen sink productions.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
And I was standing on a thing that was supposed to retract, and it was on a musical cue and not a sight cue. So guess who was still on it? Me. And the thing retracted, and I fell into it, and it grabbed my left thigh muscle, and it crushed the muscle. And I picked myself up, got a chair, put it in, tears were streaming down my face, and I still sang to the end of the act, got a doctor, sang the whole opera. But
good for you.
The upshot is, next day, a friend of mine at Die Zauberflöte, the record shop that used to be there, he looked at me and he said, well, that wasn't your best singing. I
said, there's always a critic.
Do you realize what happened to me last night? You're lucky that I sang at all. Are you kidding me? Well, we pay for this.
Yeah, you can buy a recording too.
Yeah, exactly.
So listen, I want to thank you both for coming on. Really, this has been very fun. We'll have you guys on again. Since we went a little over getting started, I don't want to be rude to our wonderful
engineer.
Thank you. I can't. I'm tired today. So I want to thank you both for coming on. Please give an email address or an address that listeners can go and check out your program.
Okay, excellent.
Yeah. Our website is Jon Fredric West Jon Fredric West Vocal Academy .weebly.com, and please also visit our Facebook, our official Facebook page as well, which is again under the title Jon Fredric West Vocal Academy. And all the information will be there, including on what guests we will invite. We had, for example, some thoughts that were written up for us by Helge Dorsch from Germany, even though he was not able to be with us live. We have many more guests planned for the future for our lectures, and it will all be announced there.
Beautiful. Frank, anything?
John, if you get down to New York, please give me a call. Let's get together.
You bet. You bet. We will. We will.
And when you do that, I'd like to meet you. I don't think we've ever met in person, have we?
No, I don't believe we have. But so we'll do all of that. No question about it. I think that sounds like a blast.
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Love to meet you both in person.
Well, you will. You will. We'll be down there with many of her auditions together. So,
beautiful. I'd love to meet both of you. And I want to hear you sing, young lady. So I'm
absolutely
excited. So
it's wonderful, Carl.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. If you'd like to write us with any email or comments, or as long as they're positive, we'll be glad to read them on air. If they're not, I'll hunt you down.
And he will.
Our email address is operawithfries@gmail.com. Thank you for joining us today. This has been Opera with Fries.